Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center?
And this is exactly what they're doing. It's eugenics. This is the controlled implosion where they pose as saviors and then say we've got to get rid of everybody's liberties to keep things together. And it's a designed, controlled implosion. How do we fight back against this? I mean, clearly we are gaining ground on, yeah.
Well, something, again, going back to Glass-Steagall, something that Lyndon LaRouche and his people have been promoting for a very, very long time, that clear separation between what are commercial banks and investment banks. And this is, again, this is the only way to go. That there's a system in Europe, okay? It's called a monetary system, which is worthless, which is based on the Venetian Fondi system going back to the 13th and the 14th century. We don't want that in the United States. We want a credit system, which is exactly what we had going back to Hamilton, and this is exactly what we have to get back in the United States. And this whole movement, again, in America is being led by Lyndon LaRouche. And thanks to you, you get Lyndon on your side a lot, and that's a lot of help out there for the people who are trying to fight Bilderberg and fight the system, because, again, we need to educate people. They have to understand why the nation states of the world are being destroyed, why countries are being turned into regions, and why regions are being turned into the world. Not government, but rather one world company limited. Again, something that you and I have talked about a lot over the years, and we see it again in Greece, we're seeing it in Portugal, we're seeing it in Italy, where an unelected official by the name of Mario Monti is now the caretaker prime minister. And of course, all of these people belong to Goldman Sachs, as does the general director of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, who was on television today in Spain talking about how we need basically to deeper cuts in the system, which shall, needless to say, only destroy what little Spain has left of value.
Daniel, again, very well said. We're going to go to break and come back with one more segment with you, but I want to start now. We're seeing unprecedented calls to hand the internet over, quote, to the UN. That just means the banksters. We're seeing Congress told, sit down, shut up, the UN and NATO command the military. World government is now out in the open. This is just an incredible time. Why are they now revealing themselves to such a great extent?
Well, again, they're not doing it as a world government. They're doing it as a one world company limited, because, again, it's just much easier. It's aristocracy of purpose, something you and I have talked about for your Endgame documentary. It's on. People should go and see that documentary. There's a lot of truth in that. In 2006, I think you put it out. You interviewed me for extensive bits for that documentary. One world company limited, aristocracy of purpose, corporations that have a lot more power than any government on the planet. You can call it UN, you can call it whatever you want, but it's the technocrats running the world.
And they happen to be eugenicists. It's not just like, oh, we've got new owners, there's some banksters. They want us dead. I mean, cancer at record numbers, autism. They are killing us deader than a hammer. Final segment with Daniel Estulin. I'm out here. WorldNet Daily's covering it. The Washington Times is covering it. We're covering it. DrudgeReport.com is covering it. Daily Mail is covering it. London Guardian, Charlie Skull. All right, we're back live. Now the head cop was ready to come over and talk to me earlier. I was asking him to, so we're going to talk to him during the next break about some of the stuff going on over here. We think we have a provocateur in a mask throwing confetti at cars and trying to start something. Probably a Fed, or probably works for a foundation. But we'll expose them as well. Okay, so we are now all out here. It is Bilderberg 2012. I'll continue live streaming after the show's over in about an hour and a half. We're going to have a lot of people. Webster Tarpley's here. There's also Adam Kokesh, Mark Dice, Luke Radowski, just countless great patriots. Dan Dix is right here. It's just going to be an amazing 3 days. Our final segment with Daniel Estulin. Daniel, Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory that you were on when the first season and did a great job on. They had Homeland Security shut down one of their episodes, and now it looks like maybe all of them. I'm not at liberty to talk about it yet. I happened to follow in the news what happened with your film. It really was set to be made by that big film company that was putting out films and doing great. They killed your film. I mean, it shows that they're afraid of things, or they wouldn't be trying to kill them. they wouldn't be trying to shut us down. I mean, there's got to be a reason they want to censor the web. There's got to be a reason they want to arrest political dissidents. There's got to be a reason they want to beat people up at protest to dissuade this. I mean, these guys are paper tigers. Once you identify them, then they're in trouble. I mean, they've always wanted to be secret because they want to make us think that their presidents and prime ministers are where the buck stops. I mean, do you agree with that statement? Are there cracks forming in the Bilderberg facade?
Yes, I've been thinking about this. You know, the fight is to educate people. You've been doing a lot of that through your videos, but I think people have to understand, to separate a conspiracy theory, from a conspiracy to reality. Conspiracies, what a lot of people talk about what Bilderberg is or is not, and the actual historical Bilderberg, and that will help people understand exactly how to fight them, because again, it's not a one-eyed monster, it's not a Jewish Masonic conspiracy. There's no conspiracy, even though a lot of people, their infantile fantasies see it as such. I don't care, no group of people, no matter how powerful they are, sit around the table in a dark room holding hands, staring at a crystal ball, planning the world's future. Again, there are many people who think that Bilderberg is that. It is not that. It's a very important element of the oligarchical structures of the Cold War period. It is a self-perpetuating system, a virtual spider web of interlocked political, economic, financial, and industry interests. And that in itself, Alex, is a pretty significant factor, because what it means, or what it meant, was that it was a vehicle through which private financier oligarchical interests were able to impose their policies on what is nominally sovereign governments. And that's what Bilderberg is, and that's the role they play. And if we take it anywhere beyond that, we're getting into the realm of conspiracy theories. And again, our job is to make sure we get as many people on board as we can. And we got to speak to the folks in the gallery, the normal people who have a normal 9-to-5 jobs, and these are the people we want on our side. And they have to understand this isn't some crazy stuff, but this is real. It is based and steeped in history going back about 1,000 years. And Webb Tarpley knows more about this than anybody else, especially when you're talking about the Venetian black nobility. So he can confirm a lot of these things and give you additional information. But again,
that's a good point. That's a good point. Aaron, will you take the live feed over there and go find Webster Tarpley and bring him over here so that when bring Tarpley over for a live interview when Daniel leaves in about 8-9 minutes. That's a good idea, Daniel Estulin. Daniel Estulin, again, your books out there. Folks, just type in Daniel Estulin, and everybody can find your amazing work out there. In the 5, 6, 7 minutes we've got left with you, I agree with you that it's not one group looking into a crystal ball. Bilderberg is one of the top syndicate, global crime network oligarch systems where these elites grow big governments to get control of populations and wealth, and then they start imploding those governments and directing that power directly into corporate interests. That's why they've got mercenaries on the streets of America, private drones. They're getting everybody used to this right now, getting everybody prepared for this private corporate takeover that has government power on top of it. But there is the occult involved, Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones. I think that's just because elites throughout history get decadent, get weird, get into strange stuff. And I think that's where you get some of the ideas that, it's one lizard goblin running everything. But what do you say about the weird fetishes of the elite and the propensity of Tony Blair, Francois Mitterrand, so many others to be into the occult?
Well, a lot of these people are just plain weirdos. Like, you don't have to be a member of the Bilderberg group to be a weirdo. There's a lot of crazy freaks out there. But it's absolutely true. Now, again, if we go back historically to the beginning of Bilderberg, you can actually, make quite a straight line for about 2,000 years back, going from the Roman Empire to the Byzantine Empire to the old Venetian black nobility, starting about the Fourth Crusade around 1200, 1204. Then you go into the Martinists, the Synarchists, and then into Bilderberg. And between you have the Venetian nobility losing their stronghold in the Adriatic and actually switching places, moving to another country. And that's how the English takeover was, or England became the British Empire when it was taken over through the William of Orange, which was a Venetian operation. And again, Webb Tarpley knows so much about this. He's a wealth of information. I'll definitely get him to talk about this. But there's just one point I want to touch on before we end today's conversation. You said something about, the destruction of the population, the destruction of the world economy, the reduction of the population to 1 billion. What people have to understand is when we're talking about, because again, the question is a very logical question. Why would they want to destroy the world economy? Won't Rockefeller and the Rothschilds and all these other freaks, won't they suffer as well? And the answer is no. You see, progress and development is directly proportional to population density, which means that if you have more progress, more development, more money, more wealth, you have more people on the planet. And they have a small planet, such as our planet Earth, with limited natural planet because they simply won't have enough food or water. So for Rockefeller and company to live, you and I, the great unwashed, as they call us, as you know, we have to die one way or another, which is why, again, we see all these phrases such as zero growth, because, again, if you have no growth, no technology, no progress, there's no way you can support a population base of billions of people. And that's why they need to destroy the world's wealth, not because they will suffer, but because at our expense they will survive. And that's something that people have to understand. These are key elements which a lot of people who try to follow the movement and get into this, Bilderberg protest or against the Bilderbergers, they don't seem to understand, because these are difficult things to understand, because again, you're stepping into the
Daniel, I agree with you.
Mirrors.
I agree. In the time we have left here, I want to bring Paul Watson in, who's been patiently waiting in the wings. I'm sure you've got some questions for Daniel Estulin, who's proven repeatedly he has big inside contacts very close to Bilderberg. We'll just leave it at that. Paul Watson from England, tied into this international transmission worldwide. What are your questions for Daniel Estulin before he has to go?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Daniel, we see a kind of shift in the makeup of Bilderberg. We've got all these social networking heads now attending the conference, people like Peter Thiel, and, of course, representatives of Facebook, LinkedIn, and social networking corporations like that. Does that represent some kind of shift in the makeup of Bilderberg, in that it's not so much Kissinger, Rockefeller, now it's shifting towards the new guard?
Kissinger and Rockefeller are still there, but they're old, and hopefully they'll be dead soon. But the point is that it's still a financial element which controls Bilderberg. But the social elements and the social element of control, this networking, be it cybernetics, whatever you want to call it, transhumanism, these are key elements of future, because, again, future is not Rockefeller, future is not Kissinger, future is technology, and how these people who control technology, these giant corporations, and these powerful people who attend these meetings, how through technology they will be able to control us. And there is no better way to do this than through social networking, and we see it again with Facebook, MySpace, and all these other networks out there. And again, we're just guinea pigs of this giant experiment. So yes, a very, very good question, Paul.
Well, that's right. The banksters, they're in control through their control of fractional reserve banking. That's the original key to their power, and their technology of political control that came out of the Venetian area, as Daniel was just pointing out. But they're obsessed and think the technocracy, and call themselves technocrats, is going to be the key in the future to fully govern and dominate humanity. Daniel, any other key tidbits, or what can we expect in the next few days as you get more from your sources on what Bilderberg is up to?
Well, I can tell you the key points, again, aside from what we talked about earlier, is NATO and Afghanistan. They want to talk about the practical agenda for the alliance. Then, obviously, Iran and Russia, key subjects on the agenda. They want to talk about the economic and the financial threats to the alliance from these two nations, the consequences of war against terror, that's another one of the key points, the influence of domestic issues on American foreign policy. Japan is going to be on the agenda as well, the outlook for Japanese economy, and of course the number one question this morning, which they're discussing, is will Euro survive? The answer is obviously not. And the second point is they'll be talking about this afternoon the developments in Europe, Europe's exit strategy on hold, question mark. It's not on hold. Europe is being imploded, it's being destroyed. We could see it again in Spain. It's happening all over Europe, and obviously I think, Paul, you will agree, it's also happening in England.
Daniel, in closing, why did Bilderberg want to remain secret? I mean, obviously that's got to be a big problem for them. They tried this mind game with people and said that Bilderberg didn't exist, this Jedi mind trick, and now that hoax has fallen. And when people start discovering that there's people behind the puppet politicians, that's the beginning of the end. Why did Bilderberg want to remain secret? Just because they're engaged in Logan Act violations? Because they're engaged in buying and selling?
Because, law and order is again, it depends on how you look at it from whose point of view. Bilderberg's point of view, there's no law, it's just order, their order. And the point is that there's a lot of people within the group who actually would prefer this to be an open meeting, such as Davos, for example, because they feel that it will attract a lot less attention. But people such as Henry Kissinger, for example, who are megalomaniacs, they want it to be this private, secret meeting, which is why they keep harping on keeping it secret. And a lot of people within the group who are more, I don't know, I think pragmatic. They want it actually to be open, not open to the public or open to the international free media, but certainly have a Davos-like effect. And we'll see exactly what will happen in the next few years, because I think if you and protesters out there keep growing in numbers, they may just have to call it and turn into a more open private meeting.
But then politicians that don't want to be known that they're going there will have to admit they're going there, and then they can't have behind closed doors meetings. But we all know it